even different yet, because then standpoint theory is really going to come into play.
Right.
Because then they'll have experienced a whole different world than most of the family will have. So you can predict this, and you can transform it by being intelligent about what goes on in the setting. So again, if you were going to work this out, you'd go to the speech codes chapter, you'd look up the language about how can I describe it. You put, just like you did in grade school, use these 5 words in a paragraph, and you say, okay, these are things about speech codes. I'm going to find them and talk about them in this case. That's a good, strong reflection. All right, let's see if I've got maybe one more good example here. Well, here's one. One student wrote about, and this again is not here, so we're okay. One student wrote that their mother is a doctorate in a technical field, and she publishes in the technical field. But she publishes under a fictitious name, a male name. She writes under a what do they call it? A pen name or whatever. But it's a male name, so when she publishes in journals, it comes out under this male name. All right, so what's the communication theory that has to do with this? What's that? Muted group a bit. Okay, so there's some muted group theory here. Do we have any others that deal with gender? I don't know that we did a lot of other gender theories. Yeah, expectation about who can speak. Right. I mean, that's a pretty clear example of where gender and culture intersect. That if I speak as a woman in this technical field, my language will be devalued. But if I speak under a man's name, then my work will be evaluated differently. Yeah. So it was just a nice reflection that looked at muted group theory, that gender affects who listens to you or not.
Was she using feminine language or masculine language in her articles?
I don't know. I don't know that went that far.
And the IT language was mostly masculine.
I would think, yeah, technical language would probably be considered man's language, And so she wrote technically under a man's name. Okay. Here was one. An office manager calls an after-work meeting today with no warning. How about that one?
No.
It's a communication issue. So it's 4 o'clock, I'm at work, and I get a memo that says, we're having a staff meeting today, at 5:15. Everyone has to be there.
Is that the authority trickle down?
Okay, so what theory did we deal with that talked about authority and ways that power gets used within organizations in ways?
Critical theory of communication.
Right, the critical theory of communication approached organizations, which was Stanley Dietz. Right, now he argued, so if you go to Dietz's article, which is chapter 21, we start to look at language we would use to analyze that. So he talks about corporate colonization of everyday life. So in my reflection, I would talk about the way that the corporation, the organization is taking over my life by calling this meeting at a time when now I'm going to miss my buses, or going to miss my mass transit, and it's going to have all kinds of problems about how to get home. Okay, I can talk about in my organization, do we have managerial control, which is strategy. All right, so what's the strategic part of how that took place? See, what I'm doing is going back to the chapter and getting the language. That's what will make your reflections top-notch. You go back, you look, you say, okay, what was in here? All right, I have participation, co-determination. So I say, okay, this was a strategic communication according to Dietz's language, because it was used without any involvement or participation from me. There was no democracy going on in it. So you'd use words like democracy, co-determination, involvement, participation. And you just find it in your example if you're going to use Dietz to do analysis of that. Strategy, consent. How can we get, who are the stakeholders in this situation? You know, who's affected by this? Well, my kid's baseball game is affected by this. I'm affected by this. My family's affected by this. You know, who are all the people who are involved? So this reflection on the calling of a staff meeting the same day after work could be analyzed by Dietz's theory of critical communication in organizations. And to do it well, you would go through, you would pick out the analytic language and then apply it. Find where it hit. You could almost do this as a chart. I mean, in your pre-writing, you know, you just make 2 columns. You put Dietz's language like participation, strategy, and then you find something. And then you just weave it into your email description. So, step 1, step 2, step 3. All right, let's just do a couple of quick ones. News reporting on the, remember we did that whole thing on the Kurds in Turkey and all? What happened to that story anyway? Have you heard anything about it lately?
I heard that the U.S. was sending aid to Turkey.
Okay.
Not too long ago, I remember reading that. It was just a little AOL thing. But
Right, it kind of disappeared, didn't it? Yeah. So what's that about? Is this still, right, is this, again, what is the theory we talked about where we think about the things that the news tells us to think about, and then we stop thinking about things after the news stops telling us?
Not updated.
What's that?
More like not updated.
Right, but it may still be going on, and it may still be quite important to a lot of people.
Agenda setting theory.
Okay, the agenda setting theory says that we tend to think about what the news gives us to think about. So that happened in that case of that story. All of a sudden it was big news. Then all of a sudden there were fires in California. So that was gone, and now we got fires in California. Then all of a sudden they're out, so now it's going to be this. What was the problem with agenda setting theory?
That on the angles, there may be like 10 different stories in reference to a problem, and only certain stories get filtered through, and those certain stories that get filtered through give us what to talk about, but we may not be able to see the full.
Okay, so it creates a public that is poorly informed and has only the views that the media has pushed to us. So it's a very unhappy theory about how public opinion works. So that was one we did. How about this one? There are slackers in my project group. That's a good. I won't tell you where that one came from. Yeah, but adaptive structuration theory, right? You know, you have to make do. You figure it out. You work around what happens to get the project done. And if you've got slackers, you write me a note about it when you do your project, and I'll take that into account. All right. All right. All right, I think that's enough for today. But I wanted to give you examples of how theories and the reflections work together. So hopefully you can finish up. If you have to make up reflections, this is the kind of thing we're talking about doing.
When it comes time to send them in, do you want them as separate emails, or can you like combine?
Just put them all together, it's fine.
Okay.
And in the email,
Specify which.
not as an attachment.
Oh, well, yeah, in the email.
Was last Friday the last email?
You can keep doing them. I just take the best of the set. So if you want to send me 5 more, I'll take them.
I have a question. That email from you when I sent you 3.
Yes,
Okay, because I didn't get
I just did them this morning.
Oh, okay. And I was like, did you not get it? And I was like, I saw that you sent it.
I just did it this morning.
You happen to know the textbook that you're going to be using for work time for the
Oh, you're going to take that?